China's Forest City project in Malaysia has become a white elephant that just can't seem to get off the ground. And with China's real estate crisis in full swing, its best days might be behind it. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. China's Belt and Road Initiative turned 10 last year. And if you want to see how successful it's been, look no further than Forest City in Johor, Malaysia. When it broke ground in 2014, it was supposed to be this idyllic, futuristic city that had the latest in green design, smart technology, and a beautiful ocean view. It was built on reclaimed land just a few miles from Singapore, one of Asia's biggest financial hubs. And it was supposed to be this ritzy international investment city that would drive development across the region. For developers, Forest City was a chance for people in China's aspirational middle class to invest in a second home abroad, which they could then rent out to locals here. The government sweetened the deal with incentives like duty-free stores, and there were plans for all kinds of green transit that would connect it to Singapore. The city was a joint venture between China's largest property developer, Country Garden, and Malaysian company Esplanada Danga 88, or EDSB, which was majority owned by the region's governor, now Malaysia's king-elect. At $100 billion, Forest City was set to become China's biggest Belt and Road project. But like the rest of China's Belt and Road Initiative, it's not clear if this future city has a future. I'll tell you why after the break. Welcome back. So Forest City in Malaysia was supposed to be this futuristic green city that would become a model for sustainable development all around the world. It was part of the Iskandar development zone that the Malaysian government has been promoting to boost development in the region. But despite the government's efforts to promote the project, Forest City has become a phantom city.
We're in Johor, right on the tip of southern Malaysia, and there's something strange on the horizon. Locals call it Ghost City. And on first impressions, you can see why.
Okay, this is Forest City. It's a bit dark. I think someone's forgotten to turn the lights on.
It's hard to believe that anyone actually lives here.
Oh, here they are.
Even in mid-afternoon, Forest City feels more like a haunted house than a happy home.
The plan was to build housing for some 700,000 people with luxury facilities throughout.
Only about 9,000 people live here, and most of the units that you see behind me are actually still empty.
At the main retail area, many shops remain shuttered. For business owners, low foot traffic translates to slow business.
Walking down this beach, I can only see a couple people behind me, which is from the water resort. People who were actually curious and came to see this place. There is furniture and stuff all over inside, just left abandoned. Look at that. A place like this is just forgotten and left abandoned, almost abandoned. There is just nobody around. It is very sad.
Well, on the plus side, I'm sure nobody's complaining about the traffic. One resident described leaving as having escaped, which he said was a relief even though he had to give up his security deposit to get out. The idea was that Forest City would attract business in these 8 areas: tourism, healthcare, education and training, regional headquarters, whatever that means, near-shore finance, e-commerce, emerging technology, and smart and green, which sounds like the name of a high-tech pot shop. But instead, the main industry seems to be day drinkers who come for the duty-free alcohol and a thriving business of agents who smuggle duty-free items out of the city. Sounds more like a low-security airport than a city, really. The coastline, which is one of the city's main attractions, is actually too infested with crocodiles to swim in. And while the pools should be safer, no one's swimming in those either. Half-built features like this staircase to nowhere are everywhere. Although there's enough creepy art around that it's hard to tell if that's intentional. Wow, those sea lions look disturbingly real. The whole idea of this place is that it's supposed to be integrated into the financial hub that is Singapore. But except for some buses that started last month, the transit is seriously lacking. The high-speed trains that were promised are still at least 2 years out. And now the whole idea of having greenery growing on the city just makes the whole thing look post-apocalyptic. So what happened to make this city such an expensive white elephant? I'll tell you after the break. Welcome back. Of the $110 billion the Country Garden initially was going to invest in Forest City, it's only put in about $4.5 billion. So far, it says that it's built 28,000 housing units. Of those 28,000, though, only about a third are being lived in, a fact that is very clearly illuminated at night by how many windows are not illuminated. Of the 4 islands that were going to be developed for the project, only 1 is being used. And according to a Reuters journalist who visited the city, the 4-story mall had only around a dozen shops open, with cleaners outnumbering shoppers. That's what you get for building a mall before there are people to shop there. So what made Forest City such a flop? Well, many say a focus on Chinese buyers is what doomed it. You see, Chinese citizens are forbidden from converting more than $50,000 a year into foreign currencies. That's been the case for years, but in 2016, there was a big government crackdown. The government said that all buyers of foreign exchange must sign a pledge that they won't use their quotas for offshore property investment. Violators would be added to a watch list, denied access to foreign currency for 3 years, and be subject to a money laundering investigation. As you can imagine, that spooked a lot of buyers. Communist Central planning to the rescue, as usual. Then, during the pandemic, China tried to prevent an exodus from the country over its barbaric zero-COVID policies by doing things like cutting people's passports. And even after the lockdowns were lifted, Chinese people still weren't traveling abroad as much as before. In short, China's global travel rebound didn't happen in 2023. Without Chinese buyers actually living there, and with tourism at a minimum, business had a hard time surviving. The plan to rent out the housing to Malaysians didn't work out either. With Forest City's economy basically non-existent, residents had to commute to find jobs and basic amenities. Not to mention living in a ghost city wasn't exactly a draw. That, in turn, led to a drop in rental prices, which made buyers even more wary. According to the Wall Street Journal, 1-bedroom condos that once sold for $280 a square foot now go for about $116. On top of that, China's real estate market has been falling apart. Chinese citizens used to see housing as one of the only safe investments to park their wealth. But after China's property bubble began to burst in 2021, following a regulatory crackdown, the property sector became a Ponzi scheme where real estate companies took payment for homes that were never built. That led to a lack of trust in China's housing market, which seems to have extended abroad. One of the casualties of China's housing crisis was Country Garden, which again is Forest City's developer. Last year, it started missing some of its bond payments. In October, it defaulted on its $11 billion worth of offshore bonds. And earlier this month, its president said the challenges to be faced by the company this year may be even more severe than we imagine. While Forest City management told Reuters in September the project was proceeding as planned, it remains to be seen if Country Garden's financial troubles will affect Forest City. In an apparent effort to save the project, Malaysia's Prime Minister last year designated Forest City as a special financial zone. That gave it a special income tax rate of 15% for skilled workers and multiple entry visas, which allow travelers to enter the country more than once during their visa period. He seems to be doing damage control after Malaysia's Prime Minister in 2018 barred foreigners from buying real estate in Forest City. During his campaign, he slammed Chinese projects in general, saying Forest City was an example of how Malaysia was being sold to China. You think? If only Malaysia's current Prime Minister was clear-eyed on China. Now, like many of its neighbors, Malaysia has territorial disputes with China in the South China Sea. But that doesn't seem to have woken up the current Prime Minister to the threat the Chinese Communist Party poses. He's recently said, as of last year, that in the power conflict between China and the US, Malaysia won't take sides.
China will remain central to regional affairs due to its size, proximity, and deep linkages with Southeast Asia.
That's Malaysian for, we're stuck with them, so get used to it. However, if he did want to take sides and stick it to China, getting out of China's Belt and Road Initiative would be a good start. But this is how many of China's Belt and Road projects end up. Expensive, useless, and only seeming to benefit China. This show wouldn't be possible without support from what I call the China Uncensored 50-cent army, the fans who support this show on Patreon. You can join for as little as $1 an episode, and you can even set a monthly limit. Just hit that orange button right there, and here's a video I want to show you. It's about what happens when video games look this real. Yeah, that's not body cam footage, that's a video game. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.